unique ability he has. All right, let's get to next story here. Next story. Trump skeptical of Iran's Strait of Hormuz proposal. Now, we saw it. We've all seen it. They asked for three different things. Those three things are, lift the sanctions, open a blockade, and then let's talk nuclear, right? There's a clip on this as well. President Trump and his national security team are skeptical of Iran's offer of a deal that would see the Strait of Hormuz open. Discussions about nuclear work tabled. U.S. officials said Trump had discussions with aides Monday morning about the offer. While he didn't reject it outright, officials said Trump sounded notes about Iran not dealing in good faith or being willing to meet his key demands, ending nuclear enrichment, and vowing never to make a nuclear weapon. They didn't agree with that. What's this, Rob, here? Is this...
This is MS Now reporting on that.
Okay, go for it.
President Trump appears unlikely to accept Iran's latest proposal to end the war. Tehran's offer includes reopening the Strait of Hormuz while requiring the U.S. to lift its naval blockade of Iranian ports and setting aside questions about the country's nuclear program for later negotiations. The New York Times cites multiple people briefed on discussions in the White House Situation Room yesterday who say the president has told advisors he is not satisfied with that proposal. The paper goes on to report it is not clear precisely why Trump is skeptical of the offer, but he has repeatedly insisted that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. That is a sentiment Secretary of State Marco Rubio echoed.
While we're looking at that, Trump warns Iran better get smart soon as he weighs military options over Strait of Hormuz. He's been saying this nonstop, and Trump tells aides to prepare for extended blockade of Iran in a Wall Street Journal article that came out, causing oil prices to jump to $115 after reports of extended Iran blockade. So what do you think is happening here, Jeff?
Well, did she really say it's not clear why he rejected the Did she really say that with a
Are you surprised that she would say such a thing?
I know. Look, this is a game of chicken. It's been a game of chicken from the very beginning. The Iranians are betting that Trump will fold because of the midterm elections. If they can keep oil prices high enough, the economic pain will be sufficient that the U.S. administration will try to save face and come to the negotiating table in a weakened position, and therefore they can get a deal that allows them to survive. That's all this has been. What Trump has done repeatedly is say, look, I am willing to take the short-run pain. I know this is going to be bad. I know and the longer it goes, the worse it's going to get. But the long-run strategic goal here is worth the short-run pain. And so everybody keeps underestimating the strategy here. And we've talked about this before. You know, how the Trump administration has behaved very differently. They started with Panama. They went to Venezuela. They've got Cuba. There is a strategic goal here. And they have shown, first of all, that they're willing to go past lines that people had thought they were. You don't take out Venezuela's leader. You don't do that. They have shown a resolve to be able to do things that nobody else does. And they've also shown here that they're willing to take this as far as it needs to go. We'll sacrifice the midterms if we have to in order, because this is worth it. This is one of those things that you don't negotiate. This is not something you can just set aside. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That's it. John. That's the starting point.
Well, we'll see if that works. They're right. That's where we're trying to strangle Iran with the blockade. They're trying to strangle us with the Straits of Hormuz, and see who blinks. The capacity of a dictatorship like that to withstand economic pain is something we might have been misestimating. You know, North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela were able to inflict enormous pain on their citizens and stay in power as long as they're ruthless about doing it. I think we forget we are not here negotiating a treaty with the United Kingdom. We're negotiating with the IRGC, basically a criminal gang that's taken over the country. Who knows actually who we're negotiating with? You know, is the Supreme Ayatollah even alive, or is it AI creation at this point? Promises from Iran, vows to never create a nuclear weapon for the next 20 years. These guys want to know if they're going to wake up tomorrow morning. So that whole business just seems kind of silly that's what we're negotiating about.
Well, that's another.
We need to reopen the straits, and we're unwilling to do it with We're unwilling to do what we could reopen them in a week if we wanted to, but it would take a military commitment we don't want to do.
Now, something you just said is really important: is that you're not negotiating with the United Kingdom. One of the reasons why is that for the Iranians, at least the Iranian regime or what's left of it, this is a war of survival. There is no tomorrow. If they lose this, I mean, it's very likely they're
Right.
going to be hauled up into the streets. So
And so, why don't they just say, sure, we'll give up the nukes?
Right.
Because they can't make nukes anyway.
Right.
If they try to move anything, these Israelis will pound a taxi cab going down central Tehran. Well, I think it's a public relations thing for them to say we're still going after the nukes.
Now,
well, just like they keep saying that, they got all these ships going through the blockade. And
Abbas Araghchi, who's the main negotiator, went out there, met with Putin. Putin made it very clear we have each other's back. Okay, so that was I think he went to Pakistan, Islamabad first, and went to Oman, then went to met with Putin, and they had a public meeting, and Russia said, hey, we're supportive, our relationships are strong. So that was a statement. Is this it, Rob, that
Yes,
we
sir.
have? Go ahead.
See how courageously and heroically the people of Iran is fighting for their independence, for their sovereignty.
This is obviously optics. You want to show to say we're on the same page, okay, as we're going through this. Rubio says the Iranians are serious about making a deal to get themselves out of the mess they're in. So Rubio is saying one thing, Trump is saying something else. Okay, you got Frederick March saying the U.S. was humiliated by Iran. So everyone's saying their own thing. This is it, Rob. Go ahead and play this clip.
They let them travel to Islamabad and then leave again without any result. A whole nation is being humiliated by the Iranian leadership, especially by these so-called revolutionary guards. And in that respect, they let...
Yeah, so Brandon, where are you at with this?
That's why they call it the fog of war, because everybody has a completely, if you listen to somebody from that side, somebody from our side, you'd think a completely different thing's going on. But fact of the matter is that, dealing with a ruthless regime like that, we don't even know who's in charge anymore. But you have to take it all the way at this point. You have to be as ruthless as possible in return, because they only respond to one thing, and that's strength. And, we're not going to have anything amicable happen. It's not going to be a negotiated thing. It's going to be like a brute force, savage outcome where we have to, be kind of ruthless.
So
and,
John is saying...
So Brandon, would you go? You were a little bit pacifist earlier. If you want to open the straits by force, the U.S. can do it. There's never been an
I don't think that's the
overwhelming
case.
match. Well, it's going to take boots on the ground. There's no way to do it without the possibility of boots on the ground. To
open the strait?
Casualty. Absolutely, yes.
No, well, the strait's open, though. I think the problem with the strait is that the ships won't, the insurers won't insure ships going through because you still have the threat of drones hitting ships.
Exactly. The U.S. has to remove that threat, which the U.S. could do if we wanted to.
But that threat could come from anywhere, though, which I think is the problem. It's like the chance of that happening is why they won't get insured. So how would the U.S. go about removing that threat?
It's not going to come from Saudi Arabia.
No, but I mean, you could send drones from anywhere from Iran.
Exactly. I don't think this ends while that regime is in power.
Right. So that's why I'm saying we have to go all the way.
So,
And-
but
and
if you're
we have-
saying that,
and
if
that-
you're saying to open up the Strait of Hormuz, don't you think if you open up the Strait of Hormuz, you give them leverage?
I think you can open up the strait in the short run at tremendous cost. You can come with some deal, and they agree to stop shooting for a while. At which point you've lost. At which point you've handed them perpetually the power to shut it down whenever they want. And if the U.S. is willing to go along with that, you might as well send Xi Jinping the keys to Taiwan.
Yeah, we can't have that. We can't give them the power to shut it down. Whenever.
So we are actually we're on the edge of a no way out. The U.S., I think, and you think, cannot just give in, have a short run deal. They stop shooting for a little while. We get through the midterms. No, because then we have lost strategically a tremendous amount. They can't give in either, because they want to get up the next morning, and they are willing to murder their people in enormous quantities in order to stop anything that comes up because of the economy. So there's a scenario here where, once all the oil tankers that are on the sea have reached port, the oil situation gets really bad for the rest of the world, not so bad for the U.S. because we make it, and things are really tough all around.
There is no short-run solution here. This isn't. I think you're right. We're in the place where it's an either-or. Either we go all the way, or we stop short, and the U.S. loses, and they don't achieve their objectives. And I think, again, going back to the framework here, the Trump administration has said, we realize this. We're gonna tolerate the short-run pain to achieve our long-run goals. What they're betting is that they can break the Iranians before.
But can you achieve that goal with the IRGC, which is the government of Iran, still in power? I mean, what I love about the administration,
the goal, though.
They have pushed all of our enemies to the 5-yard line. The Venezuelans, the Cubans, the Iranians. Nobody. We were stuck on our own 30-yard line and just sitting around in an eternal huddle for 20 years. So they just. But there's no points till you get to the goal.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, there's a tremendous argument whether they can execute the plan, but I think that's the plan. There's not going to be a short run, hey, let's get the Hormuz thing open and we'll negotiate later. This is either or. Either the Iranians break or we leave.
Yeah, and the tough part is that there's the absence of a rebel group and there's an absence of a clear next leader in the country, which is normally something you
By the
have.
way, you know who the leader is today? Pull up the guy I sent you. That's their guy today. Forget about Khamenei. In this story, as you read it, it says President Trump's mid-April blockade of Strait of Hormuz is largely about forcing Iran's oil industry to confront a shut-in date when its oil storage capabilities exhausted and production literally stops. That would be a dramatic economic development for Iran, as oil wells are difficult to restart and there's a risk of permanent damage. The White House's logic is that the Iranian economy will be under such strain that the political leadership will accept a deal that Trump can announce. The problem is that few know that deadline will hit, and estimates vary considerably. Bremer own group has suggested that Iran might have about a month's time to hold out. Others suggest that things will come to a head earlier in May. Still others have suggested June is a possibility. Trump, as is his wont, offered the most dramatic take when the Fox was told that they only have about 3 days left. I don't know if it's 3 days. So you're playing this game, saying how much time they have. They just went to Russia. God knows what promises were made behind closed doors. Gas prices in America, when you look at it right now, national average is $4.23. It's up 33.6%, okay? National average is $5.43 for diesel, up 50%. You know, you already look at the stats with economy, some of the stuff, you know, first-time buyers right now, it's only 26% of purchases. Historically, it's been around 40% historically, average age 36. So economy isn't the best today. To put this even a little bit more on them, it's putting too much pressure. So who's going to be able to manage that pressure more? It's what it's going to come down to. Jeff, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, again, it's a game of chicken. The U.S. economy is not good, and historically, oil shocks lead to recessions. It's just how it goes. Trump knows that. This is not a surprise to them. They've been planning for it. I don't think there's any set schedule. I know they started out and say, hey, we'll get this done in 6 weeks, but that was just for public consumption. I don't think it was a realistic target. And we talked about that, you know, back then. It was going to take longer than 6 weeks. We all knew that was the case. They know that's the case. So what they're really trying to do is they're betting that the damage that they're inflicting on Iran will be so substantial that they don't have to negotiate with the IRGC guy because somebody else will take care of him. The pressure on the Iranian population, there'll be a popular uprising or some other faction will take control. It's the strategic calculus here is the United States plus all these other groups against the IRGC. And so how much ability does the IRGC have to withstand all of these consistent pressures all over the place? We don't know. Nobody knows. Maybe they have an idea. Maybe they think they have an idea, but we have no clue. But that's the strategy that's going into it.
We're not talking about that anymore. We're talking about, want them to make a deal because of the pain. And there, I think, you look at
how many trying to make a deal.
How many people did Mao starve? How many people did Stalin starve? How many people did North Koreans starve? They are immune to economic pain unless somebody else, maybe the regular army,
it's
somebody
the
says
uprising.
There has to be an uprising.
They're not making a deal with the IRGC. That's what I'm saying. That was never the option. The option here is, I've been saying from the beginning, is regime collapse.
I agree entirely, but that's not what we're hearing out of Washington right now.
No, they're not going to say that, though. I mean, nobody in the Trump administration is going to say that we can't negotiate with these people because they're fanatics. What they're going to say is, like they said before, they're going to bring the public along slowly. First, they say we're going to have this wrapped up in 6 weeks. Oh, then we're going to do a ceasefire, and then we'll wrap it up. They're going to string along the idea of a deal, but I don't think that's their realistic goal.
There's no midterm elections in Iran.
The thing that makes it tough, though, is that the IRGC has guns and the people of the country don't have guns. So regime collapse, you have to have one side having guns as well.
Well,
historically, what makes a population rise up and get guns?
A rebel group?
Starvation.
Yeah, but wouldn't you say a rebel group typically exists with the help of an intelligence agency in situations where...
I think in Iran, the hope is that the regular army, they have guns. The other way regimes collapse...
Like 30% of them are IRGC in the regular army.
Yeah. The other way regimes collapse is the people with the guns realize this is completely rotten, I can't do this anymore. That's how the Soviet Union collapsed. They soldiers refused to fire.
Right, and which percentage of the army is like religious zealots and which ones aren't? That's a part of the question, too. In terms of U.S. economy having trouble, I think we're due for a good recession. Let some inflation die down a little bit. So I think that's fine aside from the midterms.
Except we're going to get stagflation. Welcome to your 1979. I was there. It was not fun.
I know.
Well, look, the midterm election. I think they realize they've lost the midterm. So the midterms isn't even a calculation here. This is the long-term goals here. Again, short-term pain, long-term.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. When I speak, you're not dealing with a guy that throws in the towel that quickly. You're not dealing with them.
You're talking about Trump?
You're dealing with a guy that thinks he can turn anything around. He is wired in a very different way than the average person tries to understand him, in my opinion. Now, having said that, you know how quickly we were talking about everything was Epstein, story went away. Everything is Iran, story goes on. Everything is World Cup, story goes on. We move so quickly. The average person moves on so quickly that it's like, you know when somebody attacks you and you're maybe a newer influencer. Oh my God, they wrote a hit piece on you. They lose sleep every night. But you know what the guy that's been around the block for a while says? Bro, this story's going to be done in 48 hours. People have lives to live. They're going to move on. But if it goes, my opinion, John, and please push back. I want you guys to disagree with me if you don't. My opinion, if they're able to figure it out before World Cup, we're scored away. Because World Cup is the biggest positive distraction they will have. Something massive is going to happen in the World Cup. And then we move on. Then you have 4th of July, 250-year anniversary. Then you got the UFC fight at the White House. You have so many positive distractions that market's going to be like, and by the way, you know how this guy works. He's going to tweet something and say, we have come to an agreement. We are very close for Cuba to be the 51st state or Cuba to be, and I was, oh my God, we have come to Greenland. And the next topic is that. So as much as I want to say I'm with you 70% on midterms, I don't think he's wired like that, and I don't think his team is wired.
And it's not just Trump, because of course he's not doing the voting. I think what you said about Iran is true of the U.S. You need somewhere to run to, not just somewhere to run from. And the average voter says, I'm tired of Trump or the war or whatever. And then he looks at his average Democrat and says, whoa, wait a minute. Do I really want that team in power?
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
It's interesting you're saying that.
The one pushback I have for you is that the one issue that Americans have focused on for year after year after year, talking about 5 years now, that's the kitchen table issue.
Yeah. Cost of living.
So you can distract them all they want, but they go home and try to fill up the gasoline.
No, you're right. You're right. And I'm telling you, you're right when it comes down to that. Right now, do you know how bad farmers are doing right now? You know, farmers right now, I think bankruptcy for farmers last year in 2025 was up 46%.